This past week, one fellow subscriber, Simon, had booked a few days of guiding with me, and in this video, I will be explaining what our goal was with each session and how we made the most of the conditions we had. Simon is from Munich and he surfs the wave pool a lot there, so his goal with the guiding was to work on his ocean knowledge, so those shifty beach breaks are pretty much perfect for that. On day one, the waves were very sectioned, so the goal with this session was to paddle around a lot and catch as many waves as possible. Because on a day like that, if you sit out there and wait for the perfect wave, you will never find it. So what I like to do is reduce my expectations and treat it as an opportunity to understand how and where peaks form and how to catch them. With that being said, there were some waves that were unaffected by the cross swell and peeled perfectly along the sandbar, just like this second wave right there. These were very unpredictable, and as you can see, even within that set, only the second wave broke well, while all of the other ones broke weird. It was extremely hard to see them coming and position properly, so I'll be honest and say that we pretty much missed all of those rare nuggets. Sessions like this can feel a bit frustrating, especially for someone like Simon who is used to doing several turns per wave at the wave pool, because it is quite tricky to express yourself on those waves. But these are by far the best conditions I've found to increase ocean knowledge and get better at reading waves. Because the amount of information you'll be gathering in an hour out there will far exceed what you could gather on a perfectly lined up day. So my goal with Simon was to keep him in the rhythm and encourage him to go for waves he wouldn't necessarily go for, just to push his wave count up. And most of them were not even good waves, but again, on a day like that, you have to move around and catch waves to understand how they break. Every bad wave is going to have you make small adjustments, and that is how you eventually end up getting a good one, just like this one, which Simon just barely missed here. Most of my waves were bad as well, but that's the point, because as a guide, my mission is to really embody what I'm telling my guests to do based on their goal. If I was to tell Simon to go out there, be mobile and catch whatever wave he can, and then just sit on the beach, I don't think it would have the same impact. So I was actually out there with him, doing those things as well, showing him how to do them and what the point of doing them was. And that was a lot more helpful to him. And just like I said, if you catch a lot of waves, you will eventually end up on a fun one, not just by chance, but by making adjustments based on the feedback you got from each of the waves you caught before that one. As you can see, the conditions had cleaned up considerably by the end of the session, but the non-stop paddling had gotten the best of our shoulders, so we decided to pack our things after about 2 hours of surfing. On day 2, the conditions were as good as it gets here. We had a tiny but long period swell and straight off shores that had been blowing for most of the night as well, so at sunrise, the waves were extremely clean. Unfortunately, the swell was too small to activate the good low tide sandbars, so most of the action was concentrated on the shore breaks. With that being said, some of the waves were absolutely stunning. Our goal with this session was a bit different. It was all about knowing which wave would open up and where to take off to make the section. It was less about wave count and more about wave quality, so I was really trying to help Simon with his wave selection and positioning on this one. And me personally, I was taking off on everything else, and my own goal was to be as deep as possible to try and get a few visions. After this wave, we got out of the water just to reassess and see if another sandbar had turned on somewhere else, but we ended up paddling back out at this spot. As you can see, most of the waves were either way too fast to make it or just closing out. So even though we were focusing more on wave quality in this session, I was trying to not be too picky with the waves I was telling Simon to go on, so that he would still reach a healthy amount of waves that would make him satisfied with his session. And again, I was applying what I was telling him to do, so I also was catching waves that were not great, just to keep the wave count up and be satisfied with the session. So for example, on this set, I told Simon to go for the first wave because he was right on the shoulder for this one. The second wave also opened up nicely, but was a little faster. And then this set actually ended up producing some of the best waves of the morning, but those only opened up way down the line from where we were sitting. So it was a good call to go early in the set, as we would have never been able to make the best waves of this set anyway. Look at how good this last wave looked down the line. After about 2 hours of some hard paddling to get into those tiny shore break waves, we were satisfied with the session and decided to call it a day. Day 3 was what I would call a character building day. There was a surprisingly long swell out there, but it was still a true 1 foot swell, so this session required a lot of motivation. We waited almost an hour on the beach for the tide to drop and then paddled out as soon as we saw the first glimpse of a surfable wave, which was the wave you saw in the previous clip. With this session, the goal was simple, and it was just to catch as many waves as possible, regardless of their quality. Remember that the reason why Simon had booked the guiding was because he needed to up his ocean knowledge. So I told him that even if he was to catch a wave and not stand up on his board, that would still be a valuable experience for him on a day like that. And again, I was also applying those principles myself. This may look silly to some people, but bodyboarding a wave teaches you more than not catching that wave. So we caught a lot of shit waves where we would barely have time to get to our feet, and as the tide dropped, we got a few punchy waves where we could actually try to fit a turn in. Look at this beautiful left, for example. I hoped that Simon would catch this one, but we were both too late for it, and what a shame, because that was one of the nicest waves of the morning, which tells you a lot about the conditions we were dealing with. About halfway into the session, the wind came on shore, and what was already a session full of struggles now had just gotten even trickier. And this is where I felt like my role as a guide was mostly to keep the positive vibes up. So I really tried my best to keep smiling and make those waves look fun and valuable. And honestly, I didn't really need to do much because Simon was such a good sport and he always saw the value in the waves we were surfing, and for me, that made things a lot easier. Because when he sent me the clips of him surfing the wave pool, I was worried that he would be very disappointed with the waves here because I knew that he would not be able to express his surfing skills fully. But after this session, we talked about it and he said that he really saw this experience as a reality check more than anything. And that was so nice to hear. Because ultimately that's the truth. His surfing skills are there, but there was a big gap that he needed to fill in order to be able to apply them to the ocean. On day 1, just like a lot of surfers who don't spend much time in the ocean, he was sitting still and waiting for waves to come to him. But on day 3, he was being very active out there, his positioning and timing were much better, and his wave count was significantly higher. So for him, these few days of surfing the beach breaks have really closed the gap between his ocean knowledge and surfing skills. And in my opinion, this is the absolute best way to work on your wave reading skills. And if you are in a similar situation, then all you really need is a few days of surfing beach breaks to get a lot more comfortable in the ocean. So again, after about 2 hours of surfing, we packed our things and headed back to the car. And even though watching the footage from those sessions was extremely humbling for Simon, the aftermath was very positive. I know he'll be watching this video, so thank you so much, Simon, for being such a good sport, and I'm hoping to surf some longer waves with you in the fall. If you guys are interested in booking a few days of guiding as well, you can reach out to me via the link in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.